Hi folks, so in this video I want to talk a little bit about using the CRAAP test to think about looking for articles that are credible and sorting through them as you prepare to do your assignment on actually evaluating them based on these criteria. So first of all, what is the CRAAP test? It is a way of sort of double checking yourself for some components that are important in a source. So you want a source that's current, that's relevant, that has authority, that is accurate, and you want to examine the purpose of the article. So that is the acronym CRAAP: current, relevant, authoritative, accurate, and to what purpose. Those are the things you want to look into. So you want to make sure that you are thinking about questions like, when was the information published or posted? Has it been revised or updated? All of these elements are going to be a part of determining whether or not your source is a strong one. It might depend on your particular source. This is where that critical thinking comes in. If you're writing about something that includes the history of a particular topic for your informative paper, you might find some sources that are a little bit older. If you're talking about something that has to do with, for instance, COVID-19, mask mandates, the pandemic, anything along those lines, anything that's dealing with a recent news issue, you're going to want things that are incredibly current. Because if you say things like, in your paper, things like, well, according to my article, or according to this article, healthcare workers have not had PPE for months. That and that was written at the beginning of the pandemic. It may not be as specifically relevant now that there's been a chance to gather PPE. So when we're talking about things that are incredibly current, you want to make sure that you are staying on top of the news and that you're incorporating the latest possible sources. If you're talking about something that is really an evolving issue right now, you don't want sources from like 7 years ago. If you are, a really good example of that is if you're talking about something like technology. You don't want articles talking about up-to-date technology that are, 6, 7, 8 years old. If you're talking about something where you need to look up the history, then you can probably stretch the currency a little bit longer. It's going to depend on your topic. And that's where you need to start using your intuitive critical thinking. Really tap into that. Think about, is this current enough for my project? Relevance. Is it relevant to what you're talking about? Who's the intended audience? This is a really good question to help you weed out any articles that are maybe not appropriate for the college level. So sometimes there's really good information on websites that are geared towards middle school kids, but it's probably not the best thing to include in an academic paper. That's a really good thing to look for in terms of audience. Another example is a really casual audience, like people who are reading Wikipedia. Wikipedia provides a lot of information, but it's probably not, it's intended for an audience who is not necessarily as rigorous as your academic audience is going to be. Authority. Do you trust them? What are the credentials? If you're looking at somebody and you're reading an article and you're thinking, it's pretty good, but, I think that the information is good, but you don't really dig into the person who wrote it, that can sometimes be a stumbling block. When you're looking at authority, look at the whole website. Is it full of pop-ups? Does it have a lot of ads? Does it seem like it wants to sell you something? Is the author a reputable journalist if they don't have necessarily experience in the field? These are things you want to think about. Is this a journalist that you can trust? Accuracy, the reliability, truthfulness, and correctness of the informational content. So you want to make sure that the information is accurate. One thing you can do is look for a fact in your article and Google it and see if others agree with this fact. Look to see if in terms of accuracy, if a fact is presented, is there any kind of explanation as to where the fact came from? Are there obvious errors? That's a good way to weed out something inaccurate. And one of the last things that you want to look for, and this one can be the most difficult, but sometimes the most important, is the purpose. Why is this person presenting this information? Are they trying to also inform, or are they trying to persuade? Be careful, because often people will try and persuade with an informative tone. For your first research paper, you are going to be presenting information. So you probably want to be looking for articles that are providing information. If you're finding things like op-eds, those are not the greatest types of sources to use for the informational paper. If you find one and it's fantastic, bookmark it, save it. That's a great thing to use in your argument paper. But for your informational paper, you're looking to present information. That doesn't mean that it can't come from a certain, necessarily from a certain worldview. That's totally fine. You just want to make sure that you're presenting information along with opinion in the first paper. Yeah. Are there political, ideological, cultural, religious, institutional, or personal biases? So here, everybody has these biases. Everybody's coming from a particular worldview. That's one thing we talk about in critical thinking. But when you're looking at this, you want to be cognizant of whether or not these biases are causing the accuracy of the article to be called into question. So that's just a piece of advice there. So that's a little explanation of all of the different CRAAP criteria. One thing that you can do while you're searching is just keep these things in mind. I'm just going to do a quick search. I thought that I would do, I don't think anybody's doing the Electoral College. So I'm just going to do, that says college, a quick search of the Electoral College. Let's say I want to write my informational paper. I don't really understand the Electoral College. I want to know more about how it works, why it was started, the history of it, that kind of informative background. Those are the informative questions that I'm using to guide my research at the moment, let's say. So I'm looking at it. I just Google Electoral College. It's going to be in the US because we have an electoral, like this is just, Google's just going to hit with the US. But if you need to, if your topic, you need to specify that you're looking for the US, you can say in the US, you can add little terms. So I've got this and I'm going to look through Electoral College. And the first thing that hits is an AP News article. Well, I'm writing an informative paper, so this isn't really the focus. This isn't really, the last election isn't directly relevant to the questions I'm trying to answer. So this might be interesting for me to use as maybe a way to get people interested, but it's not what I'm looking for right now. I'm looking for something like, what is the Electoral College? I'm going to stay away from Wikipedia. I can see that this is from a .gov, so I'm going to assume that it's going to be pretty reliable information. I'm going to click on it. Okay, so National Archives. If I want to know more about something, I can kind of dig into about us. What is the National Archives? It's the nation's record keeper of all documents and materials created in the course of business conducted by the United States federal government. Only 1 to 3% are so important for legal or historical reasons. They're kept by us forever. So here, this is just an archive of documents. It doesn't seem to have any particular political agenda. So this seems like a good place for me to look. What I did is something you should do. Learn more about the source you're getting it from. And I look. All right. Yeah, so it looks like there's good information. When I'm looking at an internet article, I'm looking and I'm seeing hyperlinks, and I'm seeing that there are hyperlinks. There is a way to contact the author. Most of these hyperlinks are going to take me probably to other sites within this website. I would prefer if it had maybe some outside sources, but this is a strictly informational, it looks like an informational record. So it makes sense to me why it just links to itself. These hyperlinks are how sources online cite their sources. So if you're worried because you're trying to count up the number of sources that an article uses, And it's really clear from the page, from your references page in your academic article, but it's not so clear on your internet article. These hyperlinks count typically. So we'll just say, we'll just look at it again and see if we can find a news article about it. There's another .gov website about it, Fast Facts, more.gov. This is going to be a New York Times article, probably. Might kick me out. I might not have any free ones. Okay, so this is a really good example. Even though there's no... even though there is no references page at the bottom down here, there are still sources in here. If you click on each of these links, it takes you to outside sources. Oh, this one took us back to the National Archives. So this does have sources. It's not just entirely its own made up thing. Yeah. And then if you're looking on an online article, this is a great way. If you click on this, you can learn more about this person, and she is a general reporter on the Express desk. She graduated from the University of Texas. So she's a professional journalist. So she seems pretty trustworthy. This is her job. And she's done a good job documenting and finding outside stuff. So these are just some ways to look into the different things. The date is listed right here for this article. If we're talking about the National Archives article, it explains when it was reviewed last, which sometimes will happen when you're dealing with things that are reviewed. So when you're looking for this information, pay attention to all the little things, like who wrote it, look into the actual website, look at the links, check to see if there are dates, if there's information about the source. That's kind of what you need to do when you're dealing with online sources. So that's for your online sources. And really quickly, I just want to talk about the nice thing about your library databases is you don't have to do that as much, and I'll show you why. So you're going to try and find probably your academic articles by clicking over here on the resources tab of my DTCC. All of these databases will come up. I'll use EBSCOhost because I don't know why, English teachers love that. I'm going to choose all of them. It says not to, but I'm a rebel. So I'm going to type in electoral college. And I'm actually going to type in the word history because I did this earlier and electoral college was not finding the kind of information I wanted. You can see all this stuff comes up. The nice thing is that I can choose to limit this. I want a full text article. I want to be able to access the whole article. I want it to be a scholarly peer-reviewed journal. And I don't want it to have been written. Oh, good. Oh, this is funny. Earlier, I typed in electoral college and then history. And you can see it'll suggest key terms, but because this is an informational paper, I'm not going to choose abolish. I'm not going to choose, I might look at the pros and cons because that's probably going to be pretty informative and objective, but I'm not going to type things in like abolish the electoral college at this point because I'm just looking for information. Electoral college. We'll start with that. I swear, last time I just did. Sometimes you get different things. So we're going to narrow it down to not be from 1948. And this is, I want to see what people have been saying about this recently. So we'll move it to around 2015. We'll try and history. Maybe we'll put history first. History of. Let's see what happens. Okay, so this looks like it might be helpful. You see that I had to do some tweaking. I had to fiddle around with it a bit. Here, all the information I need about when it was published is listed. And I can kind of trust that some of the intentions are a little bit better in a curated database like this. So I'm going to go through and do the CRAAP test, but maybe not as strenuously as with an online article. And those are two ways to find sources. And just keep the CRAAP test in mind as you do.